And good evening. We are doing it live right here, weeknights in the 5 o'clock hour in Los Angeles. Mottek on Money 5 nights a week for you. Live on the air here in 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com and the on-demand Mottek on Money podcast at KBC.com. Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms and the socials too at Frank Mottek on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. Stocks kicking off the week with gains. The Dow eking out a slight gain in the final hour of trading today. Investors shaking off concerns about China's property sector and a possible resurgence of inflation, which you're seeing on display again at Southern California gas pumps. Also some merger and acquisition activity in the spotlight today. The Dow managed a closing gain of 26 points in what turned out to be a seesaw session. The S&P 500 moved up also 26 points, and the Nasdaq gained 143 points. Stocks ended the day higher after concerns about China's property sector weighed on the market earlier in the day. Country Garden Holdings, one of China's biggest home builders, taking the spotlight, seeing its shares plunge to another record low in Hong Kong overnight. It was suspending trading for at least 10 onshore bonds. That news added to fears about the health of the world's second biggest economy, which is something we've been talking about. Real-time inflation forecasting tools now calling for inflation to reaccelerate, partly due to rising energy costs. No kidding. According to strategists Jason Pride and Michael Reynolds at Glenmead, which manages $41.5 billion, they say that with the S&P 500 having surged over the first 2 quarters of this year and trading sideways over the past month, current market levels and valuations do not appear commensurate with the outstanding risk, according to MarketWatch. Of course, earnings still in focus, with the second quarter earnings season winding down. 91% of S&P 500 companies having reported now, though retailers will be a feature in the coming days, with Home Depot, Target, Walmart presenting their numbers. We'll also get July retail sales first thing tomorrow morning. United States Steel, good old U.S. Steel, the ticker symbol on that one, X, closing higher by nearly 37% today after the company rejected an unsolicited $7.3 billion takeover bid by Cleveland-Cliffs that would have reshaped the entire steel industry. Shares of NVIDIA moving higher today after Morgan Stanley analyst said the stock remains his top pick among companies expected to benefit from artificial intelligence. And shares of AMC Entertainment Holdings, the theater chain, which, of course, has seen wide swings in the last couple of years, ending lower by nearly 36% today after Delaware's court decision on Friday to approve a revised but still controversial stock conversion plan for that movie theater chain. The price of oil, meanwhile, still up there at around 82 and change, down today by 68 cents. And Brent crude in London, which is the international benchmark, still hovering close to $90 a barrel, slipping today down to 60 cents to 86.21 a barrel. Southern California gas prices, of course, moving higher. The hot labor summer in L.A. continues. The combined writers and actors strike continues. The hotel workers union continues to strike area hotels, and we could be in for more labor action ahead. I'll discuss what's happening with Stephen Greenhut, the Western Regional Director for the R Street Institute and a member of the Southern California News Group editorial board. He'll be joining me live later this hour. A Nordstrom store in the Westfield Topanga Mall in the San Fernando Valley was hit by a flash mob robbery over the weekend. This after the Yves Saint Laurent store, the Americana brand, saw a similar attack last week. Shoplifters also hit a Nike store on Whittier Boulevard over the weekend. I'll discuss the crime wave with the Honorable Dennis Zine, former L.A. City Council member, former LAPD sergeant, current LAPD reserve officer. Dennis Zine will be joining me live later this hour to discuss what's happening here in the City of Angels. But first, to talk about the markets, the economy, your money, and the whole works, joining us live now, Jonathan HOENIG, Fox News contributor, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, and author of the book Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. Jonathan HOENIG, always fantastic to speak with you. Thanks for taking the call here to kick off the week. Give us your view of this market action today, a bit choppy, but ending the day slightly higher here today.
Yeah, Frank, great to be with you. And listen, I'm surprised and glad, kind of heartened that we ended even a little bit higher significantly on the NASDAQ, given, at least from my perspective, how so many of the internals are starting to weaken. Today, for example, you saw a much larger number of 52-week lows than 52-week highs. In fact, now, Frank, you've got a majority of stocks trading below their 50-day moving average. What does that mean? Only that the momentum short-term has turned downward. And if you want to know why, at least in my opinion, Frank, Two reasons. First and foremost, Apple. We've talked about it for the better part of years now. As goes Apple, so goes the nation, so goes the economy. Apple down by about 7% in just the last month. And the other is interest rates, Frank. I mean, you mentioned inflation seems to be roaring back everywhere you look, not just in terms of commodity prices, but interest rates as well. They're up across the board about 10% in just the last month. That's hurting banks. That's hurting financials. That's hurting a lot of those interest rate sensitive investments and the market writ large.
All right. What about Apple? Has Apple bottomed? Love asking that question.
Well, look, I mean, Frank, you never bet against successful American companies. They are the lifeblood of any economy, certainly the American economy. But I tell you, Apple, from my perspective, has come too far, too fast. I mean, this was a stock that was less than a third of price just a few years ago. Doesn't mean it's a bad company, doesn't mean it's a failing company, only means that the valuation has been extended. And more than anything else, the market's preferences seem to have moved on. You know, we talked about the FANGs for years, those small number of high-tech stocks. Well, it's really now energy that's taken center stage, Frank. It's a lot more of those commodity-related names. Even some of the emerging market stocks seem to be breaking out with much more fervor than Apple and NVIDIA and so many of the tech stocks that were leaders of previous years. So wouldn't bet against Apple, Frank, but I think if you're putting new money to work, you want to look overseas. You want to look to some of the high-growth areas now and not the high-growth areas of yesteryear.
All right, I think you have my bingo card there. NVIDIA was the next one I was going to ask you about. And, of course, that big rally earlier this year that was brought on by the AI craze. What about NVIDIA here?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be the type of situation, Frank, not unlike, let's say, the Internet from 2001 to 2010. I mean, the Internet stocks, you might remember, I know you do, went crazy from 96, 97, 98, 99, even into 2000. But then from 2000 for about 10 years, they basically took a breather. At the same time, the Internet itself expanded dramatically. So I think we're going to see tremendous advancements in AI, the technology, in the coming years. But when it comes to AI, the stocks, I think they've had their run. It's time for their breather. And more than anything else, Frank, it's because, as we say, the news is out. I mean, once a story gets to be on the front page of major newspapers and business magazines, more often than not, the real money's been made. So, for example, it sounds a little esoteric, but I'd rather be putting money into an ETF like VNM, that's Victor Nancy Mary, that actually tracks stocks in Vietnam, Frank. Again, sounds kind of esoteric, sounds kind of risky, but so did NVIDIA, so did Bitcoin, so does any investment. So I'm looking to these overseas markets. I think they have a lot better upside than any of the tech names of yore.
Very interesting. And of course, a lot of new attention has been focused on Vietnam recently as some companies get away from China. And today, the Chinese property companies, in fact, one of the biggest there, saw its shares plunge in Hong Kong overnight. A lot of concern about what's happening with the Chinese economy. Would you be touching anything China-related at this point?
No, I think you're hitting on exactly that macroeconomic trend that's unfolding here, Frank. I mean, companies have been burned past the COVID virus. They are diversifying their supply chains, including Apple, and Vietnam is top of the list. And I'm not, strictly beating the table on Vietnam. For example, another ETF, again, sounds a little out there, but it's actually EGPT. It tracks, get this, Egyptian stocks. Now, as with any investment, Frank, you never want to bet the farm, but I think now more than ever is the time to diversify, not just from one U.S. company to the next, but look overseas, to look to these emerging markets. They're dramatically.
We're going to have to find the song Walk Like an Egyptian then, and I didn't have it queued up, ready to go, but we'll have that one ready for you next time for sure. Very interesting, and I love how you bring you are spanning the globe for us here tonight. So we're on that subject. What about going global? Anything else on your radar screen?
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about the need, Frank, truly for diversification, and it sounds kind of pedestrian and boring, when markets are going up. But in days like the last couple of weeks, and I know you always preach that virtue of true diversification, it really makes sense. I'll give you one more on your list, and it's actually Turkey, TUR. Turkey had the unique distinction, Frank, of having some of the highest inflation in the world last year. Ironically, that helped its stock market quite dramatically. So TUR is the ETF. Again, I think you buy a basket of these names, but more than anything else, keep your eye on interest rates, Frank. I mean, that's what really worries me. Keep in mind it was higher interest rates that completely clobbered stocks in 2022, and we're starting to see them climb up once again here in 2023. I can't help but want to get a little nervous given what could portend from higher rates.
Right, and with the attention focused on certainly gas and oil prices again, I know you probably talked to Phil Flynn, who we speak to here occasionally, and some of the other oil analysts. What's your prediction on where oil goes from here?
The big moves take time. I mean, it was the same thing with gold from 2001 to 2011, Frank. It went up almost every year, and oil went up for many of those years as well. You know, we always love the wonderful old stock market sayings, a rising tide lifts all boats. And as most commodity prices continue to rise, including grains and energy, I think the price of oil is up. XLE is a very broad ETF. It owns all the big major oil companies. We own it over at CapitalistPig.com. I think that's one you can put in the portfolio truly for the long haul. But, rather than, I think, Frank, try to jump in and jump out to guess the day or the month where gas prices are likely to bottom or top, I think you play this for the long haul because inflation isn't dead by any means, and oil prices are going up across the board.
All right, I know you've been tracking the dollar, and certainly dollar strength was a big story, and now the Russian ruble making news today, slumping to a nearly two-year low against the dollar. I remember back in the 90s when the Russian ruble completely crashed. I was at the Frankfurt airport at a currency exchange, and somebody was trying to exchange rubles there, and the guy at the window said, "You might as well just throw them away." So certainly that Russian currency has seen a lot of volatility over the years, of course, following the collapse of the Soviet Union, not to mention that. But now, of course, with this crisis, suddenly the Russian currency has taken a hit. What about what you're seeing in the currency markets here at the moment?
Well, Frank, when you raise a really important point, I mean, a currency is literally just a piece of paper with a number printed on it. And the word credit itself is actually derived from the Latin word credere, which means to believe. So that currency in our pocket really only has value to the extent that the global investment community believes that it contains value, that it holds on to value. Now, thankfully, despite all of our political hijinks here in the United States, we still are the most.
You want to buy a car or a house, travel, retire? But it's getting harder to figure out what's the best way to spend and invest. Afford Anything is a podcast that teaches you how to be smart with your money.
Take the amount of money that you would make on that car payment, make that payment to yourself. That way, if you have to make a major repair, it can come out of that. And when you do go to buy your next car, who knows, maybe all 5 years worth of car payments accumulated over that time. Afford Anything, wherever you listen.
Respected currency. We are the world's benchmark currency. And in fact, the dollar itself has been strengthening in recent days, despite all the political turmoil. So, it's a bit of a conundrum to see the dollar strengthening and commodity prices strengthening. But I think more than anything else, it's a vote of confidence that despite all the, as I said, the tumult in D.C., we're still the strongest, most entrepreneurial and capitalistic country in the history of mankind.
Right, very interesting, especially in light of what's happened with the downgrade of Uncle Sam's credit rating recently by one of the rating agencies, and then the banks also getting a downgrade with some more possible coming up here. That was the signal about a week or so ago. What about all of that? What about the banks here and where we're heading?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the teacher giving you a bad mark, Frank. The fact, as you said, the rating agencies downgrading the credit, but it's not something, and I think Jamie Dimon from J.P. Morgan made this point, it's not something that the market was by any means aware of. I mean, if the U.S. government was like an American family, they would spend all the money they make, borrow $20,000 more per year, and that would be in addition to already having $400,000 in debt. So it's no question that, the American economy is well into the danger zone when it comes to debt. I mean, Frank, the national debt has gone up by a third in just the last 3 years, and interest on that debt has more than doubled in the last year alone. This is why, as we started with, interest rates are really the number one number to watch right now in the economy, in my opinion. And the higher they go, I think the bigger your risk, not just a credit crash, but a major slowdown in the economy writ large.
All right, what about Bitcoin? It's hard to ignore its big rise this year, by the way, still hovering above 29,000 here at the moment. It did pop above 30K not too long ago. What about your thoughts about how the cryptos have performed this year?
Well, Frank, chalk up crypto as being the asset that's made a fool of me and probably a fool of some of our listeners. I mean, I've never been invested in it. I've never really understood it. But many of its proponents have always made the case that it stands as a hedge against inflation. And perhaps that's exactly what we're seeing in Bitcoin serve this purpose right now. I mean, despite all the tumult with FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried being charged and whatnot, Bitcoin is holding in, as you said, right near $30,000 a coin. It's almost finally fulfilling its promise of actually being a stable store of value. And I'd say I wouldn't sell it short, Frank. I think if the dollar starts to decline, if interest rates start to rise quite dramatically, Bitcoin could surprise us to the upside. So wouldn't sell it short. And I think if risk assets take off, Bitcoin will rise with them.
All right, let me ask you about this. I know on Fox News, they've been hitting it pretty hard. What's happening here on the crime front here with retail stores being hit by flash mobs and so forth. What about the retail names in this environment, Jonathan? We're seeing a lot of stores now putting plexiglass with locks on a lot of items at stores here. We're seeing that more often. Of course, we're seeing those horrific videos of stores being looted at this point. What about the retailers here?
It is a terrible dereliction of duty, Frank, in my opinion, of your elected officials and here in Chicago and all over the country, letting this type of thuggish street crime unfold. And it's violent. It's at the expense of law-abiding store owners who are just trying to serve the public, and it's a terrible impact. I mean, Target alone has estimated billions in dollars in slippage this year and theft and related types of expenses. So this has a major impact, not just in terms of expenses to the bottom line, Frank, but real estate writ large. I mean, you're seeing major brands abandon San Francisco all over the place. So this is going to completely trickle down unless these elected officials can actually do their jobs and protect the public from street and thuggish crime.
MPS, it's got to have an impact on inflation with insurance costs and cost of doing business rising dramatically because of all this. So let's not ignore that. Any other specific places while we have this moment, Jonathan Hoenig, where you are putting money now and or possibly taking it off the table?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you one more, Frank. And again, it seems pretty benign and a little bit slow, but maybe that's what we need in this market, and that is pharmaceuticals. IHE is the ETF that tracks the pharmaceutical industry. And again, I mean, we deal with so many fast-moving markets, Frank. Think of this as that slow-moving part of your portfolio that, God willing, over 5, 10, 12 years pays rich dividends as it has in the past. Many of them are undervalued, and I think they're ready for a run right now. So check out IHE, and as always, consult with a financial advisor before making any investment move.
Jonathan Hoenig, Fox News contributor, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, and author of the book Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. We'll be looking for you on television. Jonathan, in the meantime, till our next conversation, thank you very, very much for taking the call here this evening, and look forward to speaking with you again very, very soon.
So great to be with you, Frank. Best to your listeners. Be well.
Thanks very much. That's Jonathan Hoenig live with us here tonight. Mottek on Money on 790 KBC. Folks, it's jarring to have a car accident and hard to think clearly when you're hit. So my friend, attorney Clark Fielding of Fielding Law has created something to help you. It's a guide called Be Prepared Before a Motor Vehicle Accident. The guide is one page, fits right there in your glove compartment, and gives you everything you need in case you are hurt in an accident. Go to ClarkTheSharkLaw.com and download your free one-page guide and keep it right there in your glove box and put Clark Fielding's number in your phone, too, under the word accident. So all you have to do is hit the number when you need him. Tell your family and friends to do the same. So if you're hurt in an accident, call the one we all trust, attorney Clark Fielding, 833-88-SHARK. That's 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK. And download the Be Prepared Before a Motor Vehicle Accident Guide at ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. Again, that's ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. 790 KBC welcomes the one and only Ringo Starr. Yep, Ringo Starr coming to the Toyota Arena September 17th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. And right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You get a pair of tickets to the show. Peace and love to Ringo Starr coming to the Toyota Arena September 17th. Call now. Caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KBC. A winning day for the stock market after a rough start. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of 26 points, settling at 35,307. The S&P 500 also moving up 26 at 4,490. And the NASDAQ popped 143 points higher at 13,788. Shares of Apple on the rebound today of $1.67 at $179 and change. NVIDIA shares popped nearly $30 at $437 and change. The yield in the 10-year note has moved up to 4.19%. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, and it looks like they've been up for at least 3 weeks in a row now and could be on track for another rise this week. Taking a look at the price of oil, hovering at $82.51 a barrel, down 68 cents. At Southern California gas pumps, we're looking at higher prices. Regular now averaging $5.24 a gallon. In the LA Long Beach area, $5.57. The average price now for premium, and $5.73 the average price for diesel. Inflation on full display once again at Southern California gas pumps, along with higher taxes, of course, as well. Taking a look at the cryptos now, we're seeing a Bitcoin moving up about $30 at $29,411. Ethereum up $1 at $1,844, and Doge at 7 cents. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good evening. The hot labor summer in L.A. continues. The combined writers and actors strike continues. At last word, Hollywood TV and film writers, represented by the Writers Guild of America, were evaluating a counterproposal from the studios that would end their ongoing strike of more than 100 days, marking a substantial step forward in negotiations. No new word on what's happening there at the Writers Guild as they consider the counterproposal from the studios. That negotiation session happened on Friday. Nothing new over the weekend and nothing to report so far today. Meanwhile, the Hotel Workers Union continues to hit area hotels, and we could be in for more labor action ahead. Let's discuss what's happening now with Stephen GREENHUT, the Western Regional Director for the R Street Institute and a member of the Southern California News Group editorial board. His latest op-ed article is titled "Public Employee Unions Rule the State of California, so expect more strikes and higher taxes." Stephen GREENHUT, thank you very much for taking the call here. Take it from the top, and how do you see this hot labor summer unfolding?
Well, I guess we're having 1970s era inflation and interest rates, so we may as well have 70s era labor unrest. But mostly what I was looking at my piece is the role of public employee unions and how they've been driving up, the price of everything in California state government. They control the levers of power. They're the most powerful interest group in the state capitol, and they resist reform. And, we see a variety of, labor units getting bumps, even, wage bumps, even in the middle of a $32 billion budget deficit. And we're seeing.
Right. Pretty amazing what's happening out there. And, of course, last week we saw some we hadn't seen since 1980. Thousands of L.A. city employees began striking last week, accusing the city of subjecting them to exploitive working conditions and engaging in bad faith contract negotiations. So certainly the public unions are also heating up now.
Yeah, and that's what I focused on in my writing is the public employee unions and, like the fire unions. There's a bill right now that would give them automatic pay increases forever without having to go through collective bargaining to bring them up to, the same pay levels as the state firefighters up to the municipal ones. But the state firefighters, the lowest level of state firefighter earns $200,000 a year in total compensation. And if you look on Transparent California, you'll just see page after page of firefighters with $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year total compensation, including 3% of 50 pensions that let them retire at 50 with their final year's pay. Police deputies get extremely high pay too, and then all the different categories of workers. It starts getting lower from there, but it's really impacting everything. It's not just the budgets. The local governments are basically pension providers that offer a few public services on the side. So unless we reform, do something to rein in the power of all the public employee unions, the state's not going to be able to, gain control of its budget. And, the pension systems are underfunded. And we work for them rather than the other way around.
That's a good point. And I remember speaking to Mayor Richard Reardon, who, when he left office, was still talking about the city's financial situation. I remember Mayor Reardon was urging the city to file for bankruptcy sooner rather than later because, as you just said, what's happening is simply not sustainable.
Yeah, and with something called the California rule, cities can't even reduce pension benefits going forward, just so they can only reduce the benefits for new hires. And that's causing something called service crowd out, where they're cutting public services for everybody. They're shutting down parks, and they don't have the money. When they start running out of money for the pensions, they start cutting back public services. And then the unions resist any sort of reform. You know, we can't even get modest reforms in police departments. The police unions have resisted those, and they're at the source of a lot of California's problems, and we have a lot of problems. And I wrote a book about it back in '09, and nothing's gotten better since then. And then Jerry Brown, he imposed a few reforms on the pension system during the budget deficit of 2012. But now, the latest leadership, they were able to paper over the budget by kicking the can down the road, and nobody really took a haircut, and we're not seeing any calls for pension reform or any sort of union reform.
Unlike the federal government, the state can't print money, so where's this money going to come from?
It's always going to come from taxpayers. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. It just creates a ratchet effect and pressure for higher taxes. And if you look, state Democrats are always pushing for higher taxes. Even when we had budget surpluses, they were pushing for higher taxes. So, and the unions often put initiatives on the ballot. They keep trying to get split rolls, which would undermine Prop 13. They keep pushing new taxes and at the ballot box. So that's what we're going to see.
All right. And for a while there, the state budget picture seemed to be pretty fuzzy. Where are we now with this big deficit, and what do you see ahead there in Sacramento?
Well, they passed the budget, and it's quote unquote balanced, but it uses a lot of budget tricks, and unless I think there's an assumption that the revenues are going to start flowing again. But if we have deficits for a couple years or more, which we might, I mean, if we have a downturn, a recession, I mean, Jerry Brown always pointed to coming recessions. That's going to cause pressure in the Capitol, and it's also going to put pressure on the pension system. So we just have to watch and see. Sure.
So the bottom line here: more strikes and higher taxes. That's what we're looking ahead to here, right?
Well, I hate to be a downer, but that seems to be where we're headed right now.
Yeah, well, that's what it's looking like here, and so I certainly want to bring the public's attention to your op-ed article here. Again, it's titled "Public Employee Unions Rule the State of California, so expect more strikes and higher taxes." Stephen GREENHUT, thank you very much for taking the call here, and look forward to speaking with you and getting your views from time to time here. That is Stephen GREENHUT, Western Regional Director for the R Street Institute and a member of the Southern California News Group editorial board, which includes the Los Angeles Daily News. Thank you very much for taking the call here this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Friends, does your knee pain keep getting worse? How about that pain in your shoulder or hip or back? Don't let them tell you steroids and surgery are your only options. Take my advice now and call QC Kinetics. It's Frank Mottek here. QC Kinetics can make that pain go away with all natural, advanced regenerative medicine. They're helping people here every day with these amazing natural treatments that restore and repair your damaged joint tissue. It's like turning back the clock. Regenerative medicine uses concentrated healing agents from your very own body to stimulate the damaged tissue in your joint so they can work like they're supposed to, and there is zero downtime. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in this exciting medical breakthrough. Patients here are getting real, lasting relief and are saying no to surgery and drugs. If you have pain due to injury or arthritis, this is a remarkable option that you need to check out, and the consultation is free. Call QC Kinetics, locations in Glendale, the city of Orange, Mission Viejo, and now also in Costa Mesa. Call 213-997-PAIN. 213-997-PAIN. Again, that is 213-997-PAIN. 997-PAIN. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KBC. More retailers being hit by crime. Nordstrom store in the Westfield Topanga Mall in the San Fernando Valley was hit over the weekend by a mob robbery over the weekend. This after the Yves Saint Laurent store in the Americana brand saw a similar attack last week. Shoplifters also hit a Nike store on Whittier Boulevard over the weekend. It turns out the Los Angeles area ranking high on a list of areas where people no longer feel safe in their own neighborhoods. Pressure to move due to neighborhood safety. Seattle topping that list, by the way, according to a new survey, with the Inland Empire second, Riverside, San Bernardino, Chicago coming in third, Los Angeles coming in fourth on that survey. Among the 15 largest metro areas, those are among the biggest percentage of adults who said they felt pressure to move in the past 6 months due to feeling unsafe in their own neighborhoods. Let's discuss the crime situation here in Southern California with the Honorable Dennis Zine, former Los Angeles City Council member, former Los Angeles Police Department sergeant, and current LAPD Reserve officer with about 55 years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis Zine, thank you very much for taking the call. Give us your reaction to the latest videos that we've seen here of people stealing things out of stores.
Frank, it's just a repeat of what we've seen in the trend in Southern California, in particular Los Angeles, of the thugs, the criminal element, to go out there, broad daylight, invade a business, and loot at their pleasure, not only at a 7-Eleven, not only at the high-end stores, but it doesn't matter if it's a high-end or just a mom and pop. These thugs are getting away with it because you got a district attorney. I don't care what he goes out and says because he's running for re-election. He is not prosecuting these people. They know there's no consequences, no bail. If you don't commit murder, really nothing's going to happen. And I was at the Nordstroms the last time. I went by there this time, and it's the same situation I did last time. There's a security officer there with a weapon. The first thing they do is go in, disband him, disable him, and go in there and just loot the store at will, taking anything and everything they can find, drag it into a car, and away they go. So what we saw in Glendale, what we see here in the West San Fernando Valley, it's a continuing trend. These smash and grabs continue, and they don't have any fear because there's no prosecution. They get away with it. Now, Gascon's coming out now saying he's looking for these people, et cetera. It's a joke. Because of his attitude, because of his filing policy, nothing happens. No bail, no problem, no consequences. But the shoppers in Glendale, the shoppers in the West Valley and other stores on the west side, they become fearful. They don't want to go shopping anymore. Broad daylight. This isn't happening in the dark at midnight. This is broad daylight smash and grab to an extent where you're talking $300,000, and it doesn't end. It just continues with another place being taken over. LAPD, as of July 29th, at 8,995 officers. They don't have enough personnel to handle everything in the entire city. 8,995 for the entire city of Los Angeles. When we look at theft, theft is up in the city of Los Angeles. Larceny arrests are up. Theft is up over 41%. And larceny arrest means the officers are doing something, 112% increase in arrests. But the problem is there's no prosecution. They let these people go, and they continue to do what they do best, is go and steal. And there's a video out about a 7-Eleven where an individual came in with a big trash can, and he wasn't just taking one or two items off the shelf. He was just scraping them into this trash can. These individuals got a stick and started beating this individual to stop him. He wouldn't stop. It's gotten that far out of control. So when people want to go to Nordstrom's or they want to go to Target or anything else, you'll find this trend continues because we have a district attorney that doesn't believe in prosecution. Now he's jumped on the bandwagon, say they're going to prosecute. Well, where's he been since he's been the DA and not prosecuted all the ones that have happened up to this point? Because it's a continuing trend. These people have no fear from the district attorney, the prosecutor of LA County. Plain and simple. That's the honest to God's truth from my experience in law enforcement and a native of this city. It's never, ever been to this degree. It is completely out of control.
Can you even believe what you just said?
I totally believe it. I live it. I believe it.
I mean, to have to describe the situation as you so accurately did, I mean, it's just like living it's unbelievable, really. And it should be noted, while crime is soaring, the number of LAPD officers has hit a new low. Is that right?
It's hit a new low, 8,995. The Olympics are coming to town. Crime's continuing. And talk to officers. If you see an officer and the officers having a cup of coffee, stop and talk to them. I did that recently. I saw an officer having coffee, and I started talking to him. He didn't recognize me and introduce myself. And what happens is they feel so handcuffed to do their job. They're so intimidated because of the situation that's taken place where they get second-guessed on everything they do. So the officers are fearful. Obviously, they don't want to lose their job. They have a career, a family to support, but there's really no support. People need to wake up. Once you break the backs of the police, we already have a prosecution and district attorney's office doesn't do the job. And now we have a situation where these robbers, these people go in blatantly, broad daylight. They don't wait till midnight and break in a window. They go broad daylight because there's no fear of the law. There's no fear of enforcement. There's no fear, and they get away with it. And who suffers? The shoppers suffer. The fear that those people have to go through when they see this taking place. It's chaos, but it happens because of Gascon and his ridiculous policies. Let's not prosecute. Let's have no bail because the poor people shouldn't put up bail because they don't have money. Well, maybe if you don't commit a crime, you don't have to worry about putting up bail. It's really outrageous what's happened to this city, this county. And I was born in this place. I can't believe how it's deteriorated to this point, not because of taxpayers, but Gascon in particular and his ridiculous filing policy on these individuals who continually commit these crimes.
We heard from the LAPD chief over the weekend. He was on ABC 7 Eyewitness News. The chief said that the zero bail policy set an unequal stage for law enforcement. What about this zero bail policy and the revolving door that we're seeing now?
Well, the zero policy means that if you don't have any money, they shouldn't lock you up. You have money, you get bailed out. Well, let me tell you something. If you don't have money, you're committing crime. Then you're going to sit in jail and go to court and maybe get prosecuted and convicted. If you have money, you're going to put up bail. You still have to go to court. But the fact is you don't have to sit in the jail cell. The bottom line is people who have nothing to lose continually commit these violent crimes. And it doesn't stop. Eventually, someone's going to get seriously hurt with this. Someone's going to get hurt. And talk about CCWs, carry concealed weapon. More and more people are applying for concealed weapon, CCW, because they're fearful when they go out in the day and the night. And God forbid something goes down like this and someone who's got a CCW starts shooting these individuals, and now you're going to really have a situation take place. Because many, many people that I talk to are very fearful, and they've applied. LAPD's now issuing them. The LA County issued them. All the chiefs of police, because of the Supreme Court ruling, they now issued CCWs, carry concealed weapon. And this is what people are resorting to. It's going to be like the old Wild West where the person who's got the best shot wins. We shouldn't resort to this, but it's terrible when you've got people in political office that pass these ridiculous laws, no bail, and a situation like Gascon doesn't believe in prosecution. When he finds that law enforcement is the problem, not the answer. Well, make the difference, Mr. Gascon. Law enforcement is the answer to public safety. It's not the criminal that rules with terror in the communities of all of Los Angeles County, not just LA, but all of LA County.
In the meantime, store owners, and God bless them, the small business owners especially, left to fend for themselves at this point.
Well, you got supermarkets where they have to lock up the laundry soap. You got supermarkets, they lock up the aspirin. It's coming to the point now you're going to have to get a pass to go into a market to buy milk or bread. It's ridiculous. It's only because this widespread theft that's taking place. And it happens constantly. I talk to these storekeepers, and they try to stop it, but they don't stop it because these people get away with it. They get intimidated. But when you saw the most recent, the 7-Eleven, it's on video. I invite people to look at it, where these two storekeepers finally took the stick and started beating this individual and they were going to file charges on him. They decided not to. And he was at will just taking anything and everything and loading them up to a big trash can. Why should a storekeeper have to let this happen? That storekeeper, that's their livelihood. They have to pay for that merchandise. And this person just comes in at will and decides to take anything and everything. It's out of control. But the law enforcement can only do their job if they give the power to do it, and the prosecution is what decides if this is going to continue or not. It used to be petty theft with a prior was a felony. Now petty theft, unless it's almost $1,000, it doesn't count, doesn't mean anything. So people don't make reports, and it just continues like a snowball, getting bigger and worse, and that's exactly what's happening. But you can point the finger at Gascon, who's the main culprit for not doing his job in prosecuting the criminal element that's terrorizing the entire county of Los Angeles.
The Honorable Dennis ZINE, former Los Angeles City Council member, former Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant, and current LAPD Reserve Officer. Thank you for laying it on thick tonight, Dennis ZINE, and we look forward to speaking with you and staying on this subject as long as it takes. Thank you very much for joining us live here this evening.
Thank you, Frank.
This is Mottek on Money on 790 KBC. You can also bring up the Mottek on Money podcast on demand at KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. We'll be back again tomorrow evening in the 5 o'clock hour here on 790 KBC.